the Beverly Hills Police Department arrested African Americans for being black on Rodeo Drive. Let me make that clear. They were arresting black people for being black in Beverly Hills. Attorney Gage is going to go into details with the horrific data associated with this special task force called Operation Safe Street that targeted people apparently on Rodeo Drive. And when we look at Operation Safe Street, what it's saying to Jasmine and Khalil is that if you're black on Rodeo Drive, then the police equate that with being something nefarious. When I think about how important this case is, it cannot be overstated. As you're going to hear from Khalil White, a young man whose only crime was riding the scooter while black, being put in jail overnight. And as he said, he was sitting in the jail cell thinking about all the other black men who had been in prison, even though they knew, and many others knew, they were completely innocent. But our system turned a blind eye, or even worse, our system intentionally put the black men in jail even though they knew they were innocent and had committed no crime. It is very important when you think about the information that we have. Operation Safe Street, this special task force, you had 106 people arrested. 105 of them African American. One Latina. This gross disproportionality when you think about the demographics of Beverly Hills. It's almost as if when I was talking to people locally here like Nadja and Sanic, they said you had to be intentional to try to arrest those many black people in Beverly Hills. The demographics show that there are not many black people who live in Beverly Hills. So you had to be intentional. And I understand, based on the history that Attorney Gage has uncovered through his years of championing the cause for racial justice and opposing implicit bias, this is the culture of the Beverly Hills Police Department. To use the police to target black people. I know Harvey Levin shared that in 1984, a black man said, every time I drive my Mercedes-Benz through Beverly Hills, I get pulled over. It's happened over 24 times. Harvey says, well, you know, that seems like a bit of exaggeration, but let's see if we can find out the truth. And he said he got in his Mercedes-Benz, he drove through Beverly Hills, nobody stopped him. He had the black citizen follow right behind him. Identical Mercedes-Benz, same year, same make, same model. He got stopped. Harvey had a film crew
Only crime was riding
and watched the harassment that this African American had to endure. There was absolutely nothing wrong with his automobile. And in fact, he was going slower than Harvey was going when they came through Beverly Hills. Because we understand when black people say that they've been discriminated against, that they've been targeted because they're black, we have to not just be able to say it, we have to offer evidence And that's what Attorney Gage and I intend to do with this class action lawsuit that's been filed against the Beverly Hills Police Department. Because we believe when you hear the stories of the other African Americans that were arrested, they're going to sound a lot like Jasmine, and they're going to sound a lot like Khalil, driving a scooter on the sidewalk. Let that set in for a minute. When we came up this morning, we saw a white woman riding the scooter on the sidewalk. And we all said to ourselves, hold on, she should be arrested based on what they arrested you all for. But nobody did anything to her. You all will hear their horrific tale of how they were confronted, accosted, and put in jail. And how when it went to court, the judge immediately dismissed the charges. Because he knew, like they knew, the only reason this young black couple was arrested in Beverly Hills was because they were black. And the reason finally why this lawsuit is so very important in America today. And I'm a little astonished that we are making this prima facie case of discrimination and implicit bias in policing here in Beverly Hills, California, as opposed to a place like Tunica, Mississippi, or Montgomery, Alabama. Because this is California. You would think that we're more progressive than this, but what it's telling us is that until we confront implicit bias head on, until we confront racism head on, until we confront discrimination head on, everywhere in America, there's a threat for black people to face grave injustices. And if implicit bias goes unchecked and discrimination goes unchecked, then it leads to what happened to George Floyd in Minneapolis, what happened to Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky, what happened to Jacob Blake Jr. in Kenosha, Wisconsin, being shot 7 times in the back and paralyzed for life. That's what happens if the actions of the Beverly Hills Police Department goes unchecked, because they threaten over and over again to tase Khalil White when he said, but I didn't do anything. Why are you arresting me? Well, if we let them get away with this and we don't hold them accountable, will we have a George Floyd in Beverly Hills, California next? That's why this lawsuit is so important. That's why Attorney Gage and I and Attorney we are vowed and committed to try to have as many people as possible who was arrested come forward and be part of this class action lawsuit, because the elected officials in Beverly Hills can't think that this is okay. They cannot condone this. We must all in unison condemn this type of behavior. We're going to hear from Attorney Brad Gage. We're going to hear from Ms. Jasmine Williams, and then Mr. Khalil White, and then we will try to take your questions. Brad Gage here, I want to acknowledge how he has been a stalwart in this battle here in Los Angeles, in particular with the Beverly Hills Police Department, and challenging the injustices and challenging the implicit biases. He has sued and won against the Beverly Hills Police Department. So when Sanic and the activists kept saying, then Crump, you you gotta help with this case. I know nobody was killed, but this is just as important. And I'm thankful, Attorney Harris, that the activist was so emphatic that you have to do something about what's going on in Beverly Hills. And I'm so thankful to have a great co-counsel who knows all the history and the culture of the Beverly Hills Police Department, and who's somebody who has never shied away from taking a stand for right. And so he's going to address you and give you some of the merits of our complaint. And then you're going to hear from, I'll introduce Mr. White and Ms. Williams. So now Attorney Brad Gage.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here in front of all of you with, I think, the most important lawyer now in the United States, Ben Crump. The reason why he's the most important lawyer in my mind is because he is bringing out so everyone can see how African Americans in particular have been targeted and needlessly harmed, needlessly killed because of their race. This is a country built on a constitution that talks about equality. It's a country that talks about how we all are created equal. And that's not just some people, but all the people. And this is an important case because this is about protecting all people. Black individuals should not be treated differently because they happen to be black and in Beverly Hills. That's just fundamentally wrong. And that's what this case is about. This case is about equality. This case is about justice. This case is about fairness. And I didn't just come into this case without a background. I've represented more than a dozen employees of the city of Beverly Hills against the police department, against its former chief of police, with claims of discrimination and harassment. And those were based on race. Those were based on national origin. They were based on being a lesbian. They were based on religion, for being Jewish and Catholic. I've gone to trial. We beat them in trial. And why that is so important is, you see, there's been a culture in the city of Beverly Hills that's been tolerated for far too long. A culture where individuals who happen to be a different race, who happen to be black, have been treated differently. Not only is there the story from 1984 that Ben told you about, but you also have 1995, where 7 people were harassed and arrested by the police, 6 of whom were African American, 1 was Asian American. They sued. The department, the city, finally set up an equality task force in 2000. Obviously, that has not succeeded. You have, in the lawsuit, we have copies for you to look at, and you'll see the allegations. There are assemblymen. There are producers that were at Emmy. They happen to be black. They've been arrested. They've been harassed. One of them got pulled over and put in jail because he fit the description of a criminal. What was that description? He was black, he was male, he was bold. I submit to you, there are millions of men in America that fit that description. One is standing right next to me, Attorney Ben Crump. And that is not how we want to see society treated. We know that this lawsuit has already had some impact. In May, I filed the first governmental claim that happened to name Captain Dowling. Since then, we've heard that Captain Dowling has decided to resign from the department. In July, we amended the governmental claim. It named the assistant chief, Mark Hooper. Since then, he's decided to resign. Before that, I had a lawsuit naming the chief of police, Thad Gully, for harassment and discrimination. She also has been forced out. The 3 top people that were running this department have now either left or said they're going to leave. That's important. It tells us that we are on the right track. It tells us but the city understands, and the people that we are making the allegations against understand there is something terribly wrong here. We all deserve to be treated equally. Every life matters. Black lives matter, white lives matter. Every life matters. And you cannot have equality if a group of people, because of their race, are treated differently. Thankfully, in this case, no one was seriously injured. And I applaud the police officers for not using an amount of force that created the tragedies that we've seen with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and others. But that is only part of it. We are here because we want to hold the police accountable. No one is above the law. Everyone, especially the police, has to follow the law. We do not want to see racial profiling because it's dangerous, because it's wrong, and because a civilized society should never accept it. When you look at what the videos show of some of the arrests that have taken place in the city of Beverly Hills, one thing stands out to me as a white man. If I was being pulled over by the police for riding a scooter on the sidewalk, I would not have 5 or more police officers come to question me. I've never had that. I've been pulled over in my life for traffic violations. We all have. But I get pulled over by one person. So why did they need, in this case, 5 different officers to approach and ask Khalil, well, what's your ID? Why are you here? The only reason why you had this escalation right from the beginning is because of race. There's no other logical explanation. And we cannot, should not, and will not allow anybody to start treating someone different because of race, because it's just wrong. We are here to help call forward to all the other victims, make a stand, and say no more. No more racism, no more racial profiling, no more targeting. We want to see justice. We want to see equality. And I am in favor of police. Police are important. But I am in favor of police that do the right thing. We do not want police that go targeting. And that's probably a very small percentage that ever do that. Most police are good, I believe. But that small percentage has so much power. And when that power is abused, tragedy happens. We see it again and again and again. And that's why we're here as well. We're here to seek change, we're here to seek justice, and we're here to seek equality. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Gage. And I know many people will say, well, this is not that important. Okay, they falsely accused the black person, but they didn't get harmed. They just had to spend the night in jail. So what? This innocent black man and woman had to spend the night in jail. The reason we can't take it lightly is unless we change the implicit bias that exists in policing, it leads to death. We are fortunate to have the brother of Stephante Clark, here with us. His brother, if you all remember, was killed in Sacramento, California, in his grandmother's backyard. And so that's why this is so important. It's not something trivial, not something insignificant, not something we can just sweep under the rug. Because but by the grace of God, that could have been Khalil White. So thank you for being here, Stephante. And Attorney Gage, thank you for being on the right side of history. They didn't ask for this, but they're taking a stand. And I am heartened by what Khalil said. as he sat in that jail cell all night knowing he had done nothing wrong. He was on a scooter with his girlfriend. He's an entrepreneur. He owns a trucking company. His girlfriend is a nurse. I mean, they're doing what we want our young people to do. They have Attorney Harris. They have an apparel company for scrubs for nurses and medical personnel, and they're doing good. They have their daughter. Everything is going good in life. He was just simply trying to enjoy Rodeo Drive. As I understand it, Attorney Gage is one of the top tourist spots in America. But he was on his scooter, and they falsely arrested him. He sat in that prison. He sat in that jail. And he said he thought about all the other black men in American history who have been wrongfully convicted and falsely imprisoned because of the color of their skin. And he said, I want to do something about it. And they kept calling me. Attorney Gage, I know there's so many injustices. You say we can't do it all, but he was saying we can't let this chance go. And I'm happy Attorney Harris and his students and even college professor are committed to helping out, because what Khalil White said is true. We can't let it go. The fact that he had to address a $25,000 bail just to get out of jail. Brad said that only one police would have come to him, and I doubt he would have had any bail amount at all. But when you're a black person in America and the police accuse you of something, it seems like the entire system takes the police word for it. Until people start going deeper and looking in the facts. And the judge saying, hold on, you arrested this man and put him in jail for riding a scooter? That's what we're dealing with when we talk about implicit bias. So Mr. White is going to try to speak from his heart and tell you why he's here today. Mr. Khalil White.
Good morning. My name is Khalil White. I'm from Philadelphia, PA. And the reason I'm here today is because I was arrested on Rodeo Drive and falsely accused of riding a scooter while being black. Me and my girlfriend was on vacation. I had to spend a night in jail. They made me pay $25,000. The arrest was traumatizing. And I definitely don't think that we deserve it at all. We was enjoying ourselves on vacation. We didn't see any signs, anything stating that it was illegal to ride a scooter on the sidewalk on Rodeo Drive. We got the scooters off of a sidewalk in California, in Beverly Hills. So when we was arrested, it was traumatizing. It was the last thing on my mind for me to witness. The judge threw all the charges out immediately in preliminary hearing. Case was dismissed because they knew we were being charged falsely for being black.
And finally, before some of the attorneys and our clients try to answer your questions, we have Ms. Jasmine Williams, who it's important to note, Attorney Gage, as we discovered. So at first they was just arresting him. They were just arresting Khalil. But for all kind of pretextual reasons, they just throwing out at him. You don't have an ID. You riding a scooter on the sidewalk. It's almost as if they were trying to incriminate him for something. They had made up in their mind this black man was going to go to jail because this was Operation Safe Street. and apparently blacks being on Rodeo Drive makes the streets unsafe. That's the message that seems to come, Attorney Gage. And so his girlfriend and others started saying, why are you arresting him? But when she saw their pleas for him not to be arrested was going unheard, she simply said, knowing that they are hundreds of miles away and that he had the hotel key, she said, well, at least let me get the hotel key so I can get his ID. And she, as they're trying to put him in the car, she runs to say, I need to get the key. And when she comes up, then the police kind of push her back and she said, but I need to get the key. And then they arrest her. They arrest her. And Attorney Harris, everybody, there's a white woman saying, why are you arresting her? And they push everybody back, come to get back, and they kind of, in my words, they use excessive force on her because you can look at her, you see, she's not a big woman. There's no reason to use any kind of force on her. But I guess when you're black and you profess your innocence, then the police use excessive force to make you obey and comply. And so the only reason it wasn't justified for Khalil being arrested, it absolutely was not justified for this young black woman, this nurse, Jasmine Williams, being arrested. And think about the implication this has on her professional career. They see that she's arrested because they're supposed to arrest us quick. They're very slow about cleaning the records. We have to deal with it for the rest of our lives. And so Jasmine Williams is going to address you, and then we'll try to take some of your questions.
Hello, my name is Jasmine Williams, and I'm here today because I was falsely arrested for riding a scooter on Rodeo Drive while being black. The arrest was very terrifying. I'm a nurse. I've never been to jail or prison ever in my life. So that day was very terrifying. When the case went to court, the charges was dropped immediately because the judge knew that all the charges was because of being profiled racially. And I don't want this to keep happening to anyone. It's not right. So I want this to be, I want them to put a stop to this. I want it to be prevented.
No more. No more.
One other point I want to make is Khalil and Jasmine, they're young kids, at least by my standards. They're younger than my children. But they are entrepreneurs. They're hardworking. They're honest. They're loyal. Not only have they worked in the trucking industry and as a nurse, but they also set up a home to help mothers in need, children in need. When the people didn't have a place to go, they set it up. These are the kinds of people that are pillars of any community. And for them to be targeted and for them to go to jail, Jasmine never had an arrest. She never had to sit in jail before. How terrifying can that be? How terrifying was it for Khalil to be in jail overnight? That is simply wrong. And we need to bring awareness to help to change the wrongs that are happening. So no more. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Gage. Attorney Harris, Attorney like to say anything briefly?
My name is Mark Harris. I grew up in South Central in the Crenshaw district. And I'm getting emotional because we were told to always avoid Beverly Hills. When I grew up, I could count on no fingers how many times I came through Beverly Hills because I knew what was going to happen to some brothers from South Central rolling through here. We bypassed this place. It's been a long time coming. And I want to thank Attorney Crump and Attorney Gage and these two courageous young people behind me for saying no more.
No more.
No more.
No
No
more.
more. Finally, we've got a bill before the legislature that Senator Bradford is bringing. It's going to go to the governor's desk. It's going to prevent bad cops from being able to leave one jurisdiction and go to another jurisdiction. These cops who are being turned out here in Beverly Hills won't be able to go across and go to another jurisdiction and wreak havoc there. I hope that people will wake up to the fact that now is the time, and the courage that Attorney Crump and Attorney Gage and the rest of our team are bringing will bear fruit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Attorney Harris. And I should point out, because the question was asked by the Associated Press already, they said Attorney Ben Crump and Attorney Brad Gage files a racial profiling lawsuit against Beverly Hills Police Department, and the assistant police chief resigned. And so we just want to set the record straight, as Attorney Gage did. The facts are simply this: a government claim was filed against Officer Dowd, and he resigned a day within this month.
Yes, we filed the first claim in May. We named Officer Captain Dowling in it. After that, he announced his resignation. Then in July, we filed a supplemental claim which talked about Assistant Chief Cookwood. And last night, I was contacted by many media sources telling us all of a sudden Cookwood has also resigned.
So I say that if that question is going to come up, those are the facts as we know it. We filed the lawsuit, we filed the claims, and they resigned. You should ask the Beverly Hills Police Department the relationship or the coincidence in time of these resignations. But I like what Attorney Harris said, that we don't want them to resign in Beverly Hills after allegations of racial profiling and go over to LAPD and get a job. Because we gotta make sure that when you have these citizens complaining, that we just don't take the police officers' words for them, because that happens far too often. Attorney O'Neill, would like to take a
Good morning. I'm Attorney Chris O'Neill, Ben Crump Law. And oftentimes when we take these cases, we have to realize that there's a question that gets asked. And one of the things that I have a unique perspective on is I'm a former police officer. Did the job for 10 years. Okay? And in doing the job for 10 years, I understand criminal justice standards and training. I understand precisely what the kind of pressures are. But under no circumstance should you ever follow an order or adhere to an order to treat people differently on the basis of the color of their skin. That's what this is all about. Many of you have children. Would you want your child to suffer the indignities that Mr. White and Ms. Williams suffered? Would you want your child to be placed in jail only to be released by a judge that looks at it after 5 minutes and says, this is bogus, and throws it out? But what kind of damage was done? So this is really all about making sure that everyone understands that we too understand, we too have done the job, and it's not an impossible task to treat people fairly. Beverly Hills needs to treat all citizens fairly, no matter what color, what race, what creed, what sexual orientation. They need to treat everyone fairly. Thank you.
And we would tell you this lawsuit was filed, this class action lawsuit was filed not only for the dignity and respect of Mr. White and Ms. Williams. It was also filed as a clarion call to the other 104 minorities that we believe were falsely arrested also in Operation Safe Street by the Beverly Hills Police Department. So if you are getting information about this, please contact us. You will be heard. You won't be marginalized, and you won't be disenfranchised. We are here for you. We'll take your questions.
Is there either body cam or cell phone video of the arrest?
We are gathering cell phone video. I know Sanic, we're working on getting that. Hopefully we'll have it within the week.
And who actually filed the charges? Was that the DA?
I'm sorry?
Who filed the charges? Was that the district attorney's office against them?
The police department.
Well, the criminal charges traditionally would be by the district attorney's office.
So do you think they share some blame in this?
I think they were led astray. I think that what happened is they could only go on what they see in a police report. And what they see in a police report, which made up some information from what we can see, led them to file charges. But obviously, once they dug into it and they saw what happened, they realized there was no merit to this case and everything was dismissed because racial profiling is not a reason to prosecute. They were for riding a scooter on the sidewalk, and it was an actual charge.
I know.
I didn't know that.
Neither did our clients, because our clients are from Pennsylvania, and in Philly, they're encouraged to ride a scooter on the sidewalk.
And I would add, if it is a ordinance here in Beverly Hills, it has been arbitrarily enforced because we saw many white citizens just this day riding scooters on the sidewalk, and 4 or 5 officers didn't gang up on them. What's different about Khalil? What's different about Jasmine? I think we all know the answer.
Attorney Crump, nadja,
Before we do that, can we just find out the other charges? Get that one session.
Yeah.
Right. The other charge that was brought was a bogus charge of resisting arrest, which is very common. In my experience, when somebody is being arrested by the police and they're roughed up, unfortunately, here most of the injuries were emotional. The scarring will last for life. But anytime there's any roughing up at all by the police, that is the go-to charge, resisting arrest, because they need to justify the unjustifiable. They need to come up with an excuse as to why they did what they did. And obviously the court found that had no merit.
All charges against both of them?
Yeah.
All charges against both of them were dismissed.
The both of them were charged with both of them.
I believe so. And the resisting was that they wanted to get a hotel key. Jasmine went up to Khalil when he's being arrested, and he's trying to get she's trying to get the hotel key because she's going to be left thousands of miles from home without a way to get into the hotel. He had her purse, and then she got arrested for that. They spent 8 hours in jail.
And Attorney O'Neill, and Khalil spent the night in jail. But this is an important point because so many times we talk about the police having discretion. Go ahead, Chris. Explain what you just said to me.
I want everybody to keep in mind that both of the charges that they were charged with are misdemeanors. Okay? Not felonies, misdemeanors. They were bogus misdemeanors, but nonetheless, misdemeanors. And misdemeanors are not the type of crimes that you have to take somebody to jail for. You absolutely do not have to take them to jail. That is an officer's discretion issue. And obviously the Beverly Hills Police Department thought that these people were such a threat, or at least Mr. White was such a threat, that he needed to be taken to jail with a $25,000 bond.
And Miss White.
Ridiculous.
They took her to jail.
And they took her to jail as well.
Attorney Crump.
And they could have given them a notice to appear. I think that's what commonly happens to white citizens. But black citizens seem to be arrested.
Just to clear up, where did you get the 105 out of 106 number? What time frame? And was that the totality of arrests by the task force?
And with the source, was it never linked to me or was it
The source of my information was retired police officers that had heard about this and were appalled. And I would add that yesterday, one of the members of the media called me and said that they wanted to check up on that. And when they called the police department about it, they were told, well, you can put in a Public Records Act request and we'll let you know in a couple of weeks. You would think that if that wasn't the case, they would have immediately come forward and said, that's not true. These are the true facts. And another thing is they cannot justify how or why you have 5 police officers to pull over someone for riding a scooter on the sidewalk. There's only one reason why that happened, and Khalil's not the only African American that we know of who was pulled over by a group of individuals. You had the vice president of Versace accused of jaywalking, surrounded by a bunch of officers. That's on video too. Our class action would encompass all African Americans and Latin Americans during the time frames going back to March 2020 through the present that were similarly situated, that were arrested, that were profiled, that were pulled over, that were put in jail, that were subjected to excessive force. All of that is part of the class action.
Attorney Crump, over the 100 black people you said that were arrested. Were there any white people arrested during Operation Safe Street?
As far as we know, we have not been made aware of any white people that were arrested. We're not saying that we know that to be absolute, but based on the information that we have received, it was 105 African Americans and 1 Latina. The other thing that is really troubling when you think about Jasmine Williams. I mean, you talk about just trying to make people submit. She only came up and said, I want to get the hotel fee. And for that, this 5'3" young black woman was grabbed and put in handcuffs.
Do you mind if we get her to describe that just to become an already? Just kind of from a personal experience.
Absolutely.
So during the situation that was happening, while Khalil was being arrested, I needed my hotel key and my bag. Because I get my bag from her, I was trying to get my bag. So in the midst of me trying to get my bag, I ended up getting arrested. There was 2 male officers on me. They wound up pushing me to the car and wound up putting my hands behind my back and arrested me.
Were they saying anything to you at the time?
No. I was scared. I've never been to jail in my life. So for me to be in there, to go from me being on vacation to having my freedom snatched from me in a second, it was horrifying.
Just based on your experience, would you ever be coming back to Beverly Hills? I mean, is there anything that you could do or that the city could do that would, you know,
It ruined my experience, huh?
would you be coming back at all? Or no?
Well, obviously we're here today because we're here to expose what happened. But from a pleasure standpoint, all the pleasure and joy of a vacation has been taken away. This was their first day of their vacation. And when they got out of jail, they immediately left California.
Counsel, can you talk a little more about this Operation Safe Streets and rodeo drive task force? Those programs that the department is specifically launched in May and March of 2020, or is it more a culture under the bird?
I'll say this. I know a lot of the activists came out in the aftermath of the tragic killing of George Floyd, and they protested on Rodeo Drive saying Black Lives Matter. We understand that the police department was incented by them exercising their First Amendment rights, and they believe this Operation Safe Streets was a response to that. And I'll never let the gage go even deeper.
You had 2 different events, and as I understand it, took place in Beverly Hills. You had Black Lives Matter protests, and individuals, as we understand it, in the police department that did not want to allow that to happen. They took steps to get rid of African Americans. The second time came up shopping in Beverly Hills, that is another justification for what they did. I've spoken to one other person.
Yeah, I was arrested too.
I think after this, you're going to see a lot of other people having the courage to step forward. Because you think about how hard it is. You've all heard you can't fight City Hall. And we are fighting City Hall. But we're fighting them because that's important. But we're fighting them because it's the right thing to do. And we're fighting them because we say no more. We do not want this to happen further. And those folks that hear about this now will understand they can be empowered. We have a voice for them. We're here for them.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
What happens is call the governmental claim and they do a rejection of the claim that allows us to bring the lawsuit. We now file the lawsuit and we expect they will respond afterwards. In my experience, when I've gone out to the Beverly Hills Police Department on all these other cases, after we bring it to the forefront, then they try to come up with an excuse. Then they try to cover the tracks. They try to circle the wagons. And that's what I expect will see after this. Is they're going to come up with some story to try to justify what is unjustified.
I was contacted by the Department of Justice after they saw the allegations that were being made. And so we're going to encourage the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division to look into this matter. Because it is one that should get national attention because what's happening here in Beverly Hills, who's to say it's not happening?
I'm right here because I got his phone.
And it's really important that this is a
Just a
national
little bit. I'm right here because I have Ben's phone.
Attorney Harris said, you don't have a lot of African Americans locally here coming on Rodeo Drive. It's a tourist spot. So you have a lot of black people from other cities in America who very well may have been the class of people who were being arrested. So we want this story to get out there so they will know they just don't have to take, they don't just have to submit and say, the police arrested me, I'm paying my fine, and nothing is going to be done about it. When we're saying to them, something is going to be done about it. And we're saying to Beverly Hills, we want to be clear, this is the deal. No more. No more. No more. No more, Beverly Hills. Thank you.
I'm family, but I do work with him. Yes, when he's out here.
Okay, if I gave you my card, would you want me to have you